One Roundup here live each and every Monday night on the Cover One YouTube channel or subsequently wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, Kyle Silagyi, joined this and every week by David Fox. And ooh boy, have we a doozy for you today. The Buffalo Bills partook in a football game. Partook, is that a word? Is that the past tense of partake?
Let's say it is.
Or is partake the past tense of...
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I am worried about it now. Now I'm worried. Partake may innately be the past tense. It doesn't matter. The Bills played football, there you go, on Saturday, and they beat the Indianapolis Colts, extending their preseason win streak from like 2018. They are just, they're an elite team as it is, but when it comes to the preseason, they can't be messed with simply.
They're coming up on the heels of the Ravens, right, who have like 21 straight preseason wins for those who fucking give a shit about that. So
I care. To be fair, they play the same bad teams every preseason. It's always, the Colts aren't a bad team, but it's always the Colts. It's been the Lions forever. And occasionally it's the Bears. This year it's the Dolphins. No, it's not. I lied again.
No, it's not.
The Broncos. I just told a lie. I just threw a fib in there to see if anyone would realize.
Is it true or rubbish?
Yeah.
True or rubbish?
I'm actually a pathological liar. I just throw stuff out there. But no, they play the Broncos on whatever day is coming up, Saturday again. But whatever, we're not talking about that this week. We are talking about, again, the 27-24 come from behind victory over the Indianapolis Colts. Our takeaways from that game, our standouts, and also what irked us a little bit. As much as something can irk you in a preseason game, I've written down like one actual complaint and then one just kind of like, it would make my viewing experience more pleasurable. So that's really, that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? That's what you come here for. You come here for great analysis about takeaways and standouts. And that's what we've served up for you today or are about to serve up for you. So, David, what's going on?
The Bills kind of sort of played football on Saturday, and it was sort of watchable.
Matt Barkley played football.
Matt Barkley did take snaps. We do have film on Matt Barkley. That is accurate.
Hey man, according to the people in my life who I've been talking to, Matt Barkley's the backup quarterback.
Listen, there are some people who I may or may not know back in 2019 who wanted Matt Barkley to be the starter for the season. Like before the season started, just wanted Matt Barkley entrenched as the 2019 Buffalo Bills starter, not Josh Allen.
That is a take that I read. I did read a take that was something along the lines of this is a playoff team with Barkley. It ended up being a playoff team with Allen, a much better team with Allen than it would have been with Barkley because that still wasn't a good team, but it was a better team than 2018. But hey, Barkley did win a game in 2018. Also won a game, this game against the Colts. But before we get into our takeaways and standouts from that game, Cover One and this podcast are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. David, can you tell us a little bit about our friends over there at Underdog Fantasy?
I would love to tell everyone about the fact that Cover One is excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football, and that is Underdog Fantasy. If you have your one home league, man, imagine just having the one and not like
nerds
3 or 4 that your friends and family just drag you into, and you feel obligated to do it. But imagine if you just only had one, and that one draft just wasn't enough each year for you. Then Underdog Fantasy is definitely for you. All the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your own team, all the chances to win big with none of the week-to-week hassle. If you use the promo code COVER1, that's cover number 1, when signing up to make your first deposit, and then Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That's $100 free with Underdog. If you use the promo code COVER1. Even better, Underdog's Best Ball Mania 3 contest is going to make 3 players millionaires. That's right, $10 million in total prizes, $2 million to the first, $1 million to the second, and $1 million bonus to the team with the most regular season points. That's 3 chances to win at least $1 million. Sign up now using promo code COVER1 and take your chance at $1 million today with Underdog Fantasy.
Again, that is promo code COVER1. And before we get any further into this show, I would just like to remind everyone about the great content that we have most nights of the week here on the Cover One YouTube channel. You have the Air Raid Hour coming up at 9 o'clock after this show. Tomorrow, big day tomorrow, Going Deep podcast, followed by the Film Room with Isaiah Hodgins, who has been a fan favorite forever. He's been a fan favorite since he's been drafted. Everyone's been telling me that Isaiah Hodgins is going to be very good. I haven't seen it until Saturday when he showed that, he's actually very good. So he'll be on tomorrow on the Film Room to break down his performance against the Colts, his release packages, all that great stuff that you expect to get from the Film Room. Check that out tomorrow. Then on Wednesday, you have this guy's coverage and the Cover One Buffalo. So make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all this great content. Okay. David, if you're ready, I'm ready to get into our standouts from this Bills win.
Born ready to talk about week 1 of preseason.
Let's go. I kind of just teased a wide receiver there, and it would have been great had I written Isaiah Hodgins down as one of my standouts, but I've written him down as an honorable mention because Isaiah Hodgins was still very good, had an incredible catch along the sideline, but to me, the wide receiver who stood out the most is Khalil Shakir. David, this has been a Khalil Shakir fan podcast since he was drafted. I think we both came on after the draft, and we were both like, that's incredible value. He's going to be a very good wide receiver. Maybe not this year, but one day he's going to be a consistent contributor in this offense. We saw in this preseason game against the Colts that while he may not play a lot this year, just because the depth chart is so stacked above him at wide receiver, he could contribute if his number is called upon. He is already that good, that mature, that familiar, I guess, or he's already that comfortable in the offense that he could contribute. I feel he could contribute meaningful snaps right away if he had to, barring any injuries or whatever. Hopefully you don't want, or obviously you don't want any of those to happen, but if Khalil Shakir's number got called upon, I'm confident that he could contribute. He was always open against the Colts. Yes. He just consistently found the soft spots in the coverage and consistently exposed them, made a couple of very nice catches along the sideline, ended the day with 5 receptions on 5 targets for 92 yards. That's 18.4 yards per reception. That's a pretty good average there. Most impressive to me is that all 5 of his receptions went for first downs, which isn't something that I saw really anyone talk about. People were kind of scared about the whole 3rd and goal or whatever. That whole Beasley's not going to be around to move the chains.
Right.
Shakir's already doing it, right? Shakir may be better. I don't know. People are talking. Maybe Shakir has never not caught an NFL pass not for a first down. That's all I'm saying.
Kyle.
That's all.
That's stat. Stat that.
People are talking. Exactly. Stat that. That's a real statistic right there, and that's what you come to the Roundup for. The Bills kind of lined him up everywhere yesterday, and by yesterday I mean 2 days ago on Saturday. Again, I'm a pathological liar. Sorry. Again, 17 snaps in the slot, 13 out wide. I think he also had 1 in the backfield. Kind of just moved him around the field. Obviously, he projects as a slot receiver. Probably that's likely where his ultimate role as a starter in this offense is going to come. But he has positional versatility. You can really do whatever you want with him, and he can line up anywhere, as we saw on Saturday. You can line him up wherever you want. There were some concerns about drops in college, about his ability to hold on to the football. Didn't show up on Saturday, not saying that it can't show up in the preseason or in the regular season or at any point in his NFL career. But again, in our first sample size of Khalil Shakir through training camp and now through 1 preseason game, not an issue. No drops. Again, 5 receptions on 5 targets. As I said, just consistently got open. Nice catches along the sideline. And we've said on this podcast in the past, what impresses me about Khalil Shakir, which we did not see in this game, and I would say is his strength, is his ability to go and willingness and not his lack of fear to go over the middle of the field and come down with hard contested catches. He is not afraid to take a hit, not afraid to come down with the football, and we didn't even see him do that. I think all of his catches were near or along the sideline on Saturday. And like I said, his strength is over the middle of the field. I'm here praising him, and I didn't even see what I think is his biggest strength. So really good stuff from Khalil Shakir in his NFL debut. Also returned 2 punts, not great. But whatever. We're talking about Khalil Shakir as a receiver here. We're not talking about Khalil Shakir, the punt returner, which coincidentally is probably where he would contribute as a rookie, would be as a punt returner, and he wasn't great. But we're just going to focus on the positives here. Focus on him as a punt returner, or not as a punt returner, as a receiver. As I said, I think he could contribute this year. I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to, but I think worst case scenario, sky is falling. I think Khalil Shakir could give you meaningful snaps if need be. And if not this year, he definitely will be a piece moving forward. So, David, Khalil Shakir, how do you feel?
We've been big fans, and our fandom has been rewarded, even if it's just through this first preseason game. I mean, he was the most consistent player on the Bills offense on Saturday. That's 100% for sure. I mean, he was making very clean, easy catches. He looked like he had been doing this for years and years. Like he didn't look like a rookie to me. I mean, he looked like he was ready to fill that role and to just do what he's been doing in college. And maybe he's just used to playing on Saturday.
That's maybe this is just that's a good talking point.
Yeah, maybe who knows how this is going to happen on Sundays.
That's true. Yeah.
We need to see it on a Sunday, not on a Saturday. But he was super consistent. He was able to go up and reach for the ball even when if it wasn't a contested situation. He just moved the chains, and he was just money. He was money every time they threw at him. 5 for 5, 90 plus receiving yards. What more do you want from your first taste of NFL action, other than, I don't know, maybe a touchdown or something? But still, like that. It was a great performance by Khalil Shakir, and took balls from Case Keenum and Matt Barkley. So it's not just like one quarterback who developed a rapport and just sort of threw at him a bunch. It was it was both of them, and I think that also says something as well, that he's earned the trust of quarterbacks in this offense, and also is just able to get open and work within this offense, which is new to him as well. Like that's what you want. So big Khalil Shakir fans, always have been, always will be, as long as he continues on this trajectory.
Yes, he has certainly earned the trust of the backup quarterback, and then also Case Keenum. And then you listen to his post-game press conference, right? And he just says, like, yeah, I played fine, but it was my teammates who really set me up, who really put me in the position to succeed. If that doesn't scream process to you, right?
Yes.
We've kind of gotten away from process as a fan base. Yeah. 5 years ago, everyone was talking about the process. Mm-hmm. We've kind of gotten away from it because it's just kind of, it's what it is now. It's the standard. The standard is the standard. But that is just such a McDermott-ism. Like, that is just such something that doesn't make sense, but you know what I'm trying to say. That is something that Bean and McDermott obviously love, and the type of character they look for is the team-first character guy who is like, oh, yeah, I was okay, but the rest of my teammates really put me in the position to succeed, and that's why we won. Or, the rest of the team is why we won. You saw Khair Elam said in his post-game press conference something along the lines of, like, I just did my 111th. So you can really tell. Just the whole rookie class in general. We'll talk about them all later. Elam played well. Benford played well. Balin Specter, Terrell Bernard, Matt Ariza, Punt God, who we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking a lot about the rookie class today because they showed out. They had opportunities to show out, and they largely did, except Luke Tenuta, who we will not be talking about. No Luke Tenuta talk, okay, David? Ever on the podcast.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Moving on. What is your first, or who is your first standout? Is it one of the aforementioned members of the rookie class?
It will be later, but right now we're going to talk about somebody from the free agent class, and that is one Tim Settle. Tim Settle was awesome on Saturday. The Bills rested pretty much every starter on offense and defense. Tim Settle ends up being one of the starters on defense on Saturday, and the Colts played pretty much all of their starters. including one Quentin Nelson. And Tim Settle made some plays against Quentin Nelson, and just against that Colts offense as a whole. I mean, Eric's been posting clips of Tim Settle pretty much all day, just pushing Nelson back on a couple of different pass rush reps, and coming across on a run play, and then coming back to make the play before the running back could cut back into the hole. Super, super impressive. Like, and this is a guy who, like, athletically speaking, very gifted. Just wasn't somebody that really put a ton of stuff together when he was at Virginia Tech. Ends up being a 5th round pick and goes to the Washington franchise. I never know what to do with Washington in the past tense. Like, do I call them the Washington Commanders because they didn't actually exist as the Commanders before this year? Do I call them the Washington Football Team? They were only that for 1 year. I'm definitely not calling them what they used to be called.
Yeah.
So anyway, Washington.
The Washingtons,
yeah. He was on there and was behind a lot of other really, really, really good and talented defensive linemen. Got to learn with a really good defensive line coach in Jim Tomsula, I believe, who was there when he was there. And just he clearly soaked up enough of that to be able to come in here and put together a really good quarter and a half of football against one of the best guards in the game. Just super, super impressive from Tim Settle, and to have him as, just one of your rotational guys, just somebody that you have when you already have guys like Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips coming back. I mean, like, it's kind of crazy that this backup can still make quite a few plays all on his own without even the assistance of guys on the edge like Von Miller or Greg Rousseau. I mean, this is just super, super, super impressive. And it shows that, like, this is sort of what they've been wanting for a while now, right? Is like they've obviously been a team that has wanted a deep defensive line rotation. They like rotating their defensive line, and they've spent a lot of picks. They spent a lot of money in free agency to try and figure that out. And for one reason or another, it hasn't quite been what they've wanted it to be. I think this year they have what they want, and I think it's going to make this defense even better than what it was last year. And last year they were the number one defense by DVOA. So pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, that's a point that I want to get to later. That's one of my takeaways is the defensive line and how, like you said, this year they've wanted to do they have done the defensive line rotation thing since McDermott and Frazier got here. But this is the first time, at least in recent years, probably ever, that they've actually had like two really good front fours that are two fully rotational units that they're going to get production from. Like before, it was like, yeah, they rotate, but they're really not going to get production from Star Latulele or like Mario Addison's not. He's going to be fine, but he's not going to really produce much for you. Whereas like, Tim Settle, he finishes the game with I think just one run stop, or I think that's statistically, like, I don't even know if he really shows up on the stat sheet. I don't know if he finished with a tackle, or I think he did. I think he finished with
he got one tackle. Yeah.
But again, as you watch the game, as people who watch the game,
watch the game and you'll see Tim Settle pop.
Just consistently, consistent, impressive reps from Tim Settle. That Quentin Nelson rep, I mean, he had a couple of nice ones, but the one that I'm talking about, the one where he just kind of pops up and just pushes him back, and Nelson's like, whoa. Like, it basically startled that Tim Settle just came at him like this.
Nelson was shook.
Just pushing guards back into Matt Ryan, just shedding blocks and getting to the running back in the backfield. Again, I'll talk about Settle more later. I'll talk about Boogie Basham more later when it comes to defensive line rotation. But
while we're here, now we're getting sources from the comments that smashing the like button, hitting that like button, will help Tre'Davious White be ready to play earlier. Now that's unconfirmed from our sources here at the Buffalo Roundup, but
let me try to confirm that.
Yeah, we'll get Kyle and our producers to confirm that, but that is a developing story. And as Jason Taylor says, now on IR, broke his thumb, smashed in the leg. So thank you.
That was
Jason.
a quick diagnosis, but
I know.
we appreciate it.
He was ready. He was ready. He was ready for that.
That's a great segue to move us into the cornerbacks. I agree on Settle. We'll talk about him more later. And then just the cornerbacks. I do want to bring up the cornerbacks because this has been maybe the most talked about position group with the Bills this offseason. Going into the offseason, it was the dire need for a second cornerback opposite Tre'Davious White and just the lack of depth really at the position in general. You had on the depth chart at one point this offseason, you had Tre'Davious White, Dane Jackson, and then Nick McLeod and Elijah Griffin and Cam Lewis, Saron Neal, who's a special teamer. Like, he really didn't have that much depth at corner. Yesterday, and by that I mean Saturday, I need to remember what day of the week it is. I need to figure this out. We've been doing this show on Monday for a year. I need to figure it out. But the cornerbacks really showed out on Saturday to me. Kaiir Elam and Christian Benford, both playing on 38 snaps, both impressing. Kaiir Elam finishes the game with one pass breakup on a very nice rep against Alec Pierce. Also had a rep where he did allow a reception over the middle of the field and tackled the dude immediately. Like, the dude picked up not an inch after he caught the ball, and then Kaiir Elam gets pissed at himself that he didn't break up the ball. It's like you held him to like a 4-yard gain. That's still not bad. That's still pretty impressive, right? You kind of follow him over the middle of the field and stop him from picking up any additional yards, and you're mad he didn't break up the pass. But again, that speaks to the character that these guys have, that these rookies, that these people who the Bills are bringing in, the character they have. Again, Elam finishes the game. I think he allowed 3 receptions on 5 targets for 30 yards. Not like a perfect game. He was physical. You saw the physicality that you get out of Kaiir Elam, and that worked at times. You saw reps where he just took receivers out of the play with his physicality. I think he also got flagged once. So and that's what we've been talking about with Elam, is he's an aggressive player, physical, and that physicality can get him into some troublesome spots at times, but largely it works to his benefit. And we saw on Saturday, it did largely work to his benefit. A very strong debut performance from Kaiir Elam. And then with Christian Benford, this is a dude who just has come out of nowhere these last couple of weeks. The Villanova cornerback who just no one really knew what to expect out of him. What position is he even going to play? Nobody really had a clue. Gets first team reps out of nowhere in training camp, and then comes out, starts the first preseason game, has 38 snaps and plays very well. Again, only allows 1 reception on 2 targets, and the other target broke up a Michael Pittman pass on a 4th and 4. Again, Michael Pittman, we know who Michael Pittman is. He is a very good young receiver, 2nd-round pick a couple years ago.
Very physical receiver.
Right. Borderline 1st-round pick. We know that Michael Pittman is very good. Their number 1 wideout. And here's FCS corner Christian Benford, who was playing for Villanova 6 months ago or whatever, or 8 months ago, breaking up a pass in his first NFL game. Again, this isn't something that I think you can extrapolate. Like, you can expect growing pains from Christian Benford. You're not going to expect him to be this good consistently. You're going to expect the Villanova corner to have a welcome to the NFL moment, but a very promising debut. So we've gone with the cornerback position. We've gone from this state of they have no depth. They need players. They need bodies at this position. They need talent to, okay, you got Dane Jackson, who we know what he is. We have Kaiir Elam here, who, again, looks very promising. You have Christian Benford, who there's still, jury may still be out, but early signs are very promising for Christian Benford. You also have Nick McLeod, who is, he's
somebody that they tried to keep last year and couldn't.
Exactly. You have Cam Lewis. You have Saron Neal, who can play in an emergency, I guess. And then you also have Tre'Davious White coming back. We're not even factoring Tre'Davious White, one of the best corners in the league in this conversation. So you add Tre'Davious White to the top, and you just look at the depth. You look at Dane Jackson, Christian Benford, Kaiir Elam. Those are 3 good players there at cornerback too. So regardless of who ultimately starts opposite White, I think it still looks like it's going to be Elam. you have two very, very nice depth options there should something happen to either one of them in Benford and Jackson. So the cornerback depth, again, like I said, a couple months ago looked problematic, now looks pretty solid. So David, what are your thoughts on the cornerback depth?
I mean, it's hard to add anything else on. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Again, like this is sort of what this team does with McBean, if we want to call it that. Just they like taking, little flyers on DBs that nobody really knows or has heard of, and they just turn them into, at the very minimum, just like legit players that can play actual reps in the NFL. And it's impressive. It's always been impressive that guys like somebody like a Christian Benford from Villanova can just come in, and suddenly there's, as Cynthia Freeland reported, just like, oh yeah, there's multiple executives around the league that are going to be interested in him come cut down day if it comes to that. And I think at this point, when you have other executives looking into your current 6th round pick or whatever he was, you're doing something right, and you've got something that you shouldn't let go of. Because here's the thing, whatever they end up getting from Christian Benford as a special teamer, but especially as an actual defensive back, is going to be an incredible value, just because he's getting paid next to nothing as a rookie. So this again is why coaching is just so important, and why fit and matching up the player with the team is so important to the success of your draft. There's good players that can go to teams that just don't know how to use a certain player. I mean, if you look at
Laviska Shenault.
Well, Laviska Shenault for sure, but also I don't know how much of the Arizona Cardinals you keep track of, Kyle. But
boy.
First of all, that's a team that's sending
not enough
bad vibes the entire offseason. And part of that is because their GM Steve Keim just cannot help himself but draft all these tweeners for coaching staffs that don't want to use tweeners. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. He keeps drafting guys like Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons and Byron Murphy.
He buys into the hype. He really
he loves it, and I guarantee the reason he believes in his ability to get these players is because he was successful with Deon Buchanan once for like a brief amount of time before everyone realized just how bad Deon Buchanan was. But he just keeps chasing that. He's like the Saints. They just can't help themselves. They just like, I gotta keep chasing that one thing to keep us successful, even if it wasn't a successful thing. Like, it just anyway. But when it comes to this team with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, they know what they want. They know exactly what they want, and they go get what they want.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a team that took as the perfect timing. Wow, thank you, Stephen Noble. Let's bring this. Saron Neal, Teron Johnson, Benford. Beane's list of jewels in a junkyard is amazing. First of all, love that phrase, jewels in a junkyard. Gonna be stealing that probably later.
That has been helping our cliches recently.
That's right. It's great. Love it. But I mean, yeah, like Saron Neal, nobody knew what to do with him. Turns out he's just one of the best special teams players in the NFL from Jacksonville State. And then you have Teron Johnson, one of the best nickel corners in the NFL from Weber State. And now you have a 6th-round rookie getting national attention from Villanova. This is what this staff does. I mean, obviously, we talked about it on drafting. We're like, hey, if they draft a defensive back, cool. We know that if they're going to stay on the roster, it means they're probably going to be good and good when they come in. And if they don't, then they're probably not going to make it in the NFL. That wasn't shade at Lafayette Pitts, by the way. We love you, Lafayette. Want to come on the pod?
He's going to be on the show. Before I die, Lafayette Pitts will be on the show. But no, we should have known, David. I was just like kind of dismissive of Christian Benford because on the draft show I was just like, Villanova has a football team. I should have known. I should have known that the defensive back who played in Philadelphia was going to succeed under McDermott. I should have known. We had a lot of good comments there that I want to get through. Ken Waller writes, the whole secondary is full of late rounders. McDermott and Frazier coach well. Probably the best defensive backs coaching staff in the NFL is here in Buffalo. Consistently
and John Butler, who Tre'Davious White has talked about plenty of times before.
Exactly. Consistently getting the most out of DBs. John writes, Benford on the 53, put it in bold marker. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Benford and McLeod and about does it come down to one of those for a roster spot? And I said something along the lines of like, I'd go with, as of now, I'd go with McLeod because they tried to get him on the practice squad once and couldn't. But, you know, Benford could come out and prove otherwise. Benford has come out and proven otherwise. Benford, I think as of now, again, as you brought up, David, Cynthia Freeland's on the sideline receiving text messages from GMs and executives asking if Christian Benford's making the 53. Christian Benford, I think, is making the 53 unless something crazy happens. Also, I want to bring up this other comment from a while. Chat is electric tonight. This is how you know. Silas writes, how confident are we in our rookie cornerbacks in week 1? The Rams are loaded at wide receiver, but can we beat them with Elam, Benford, and Dane Jackson? This is a good question because Benford on Michael Pittman was great, right? That's a great first effort there, a great first sample size from Christian Benford. Do I expect him to replicate that on Cooper Kupp or Allen Robinson or whoever else? Or do I expect Elam to be able to replicate that? I don't know. I don't know if you can expect it. Obviously, I would like Tre'Davious White in that situation more than I would like Elam, Benford, or Dane Jackson. But I don't think we're hitting the panic button because, as we said, they've looked good in limited sample size. We trust the coaching staff. Also, increased production out of hopefully the D-line rotation should result in Matt Stafford, who might need Tommy John surgery or whatever, has this weird elbow injury. Hopefully they'll be getting in his face and he'll be having to get the ball out quicker. And then you're going to have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer back there helping out the two young corners, whoever they end up being. So again, while Tre'Davious White being back and fully healthy would be the, albeit probably unlikely, would be the preferred scenario, I'm not overly concerned with the idea of going in with a combination of Elam, Benford, and Jackson.
Yeah, and with regards to the Rams, someone, Ken Waller mentioned earlier, Rams O-line has been reshaped this offseason. Andrew Whitworth retired. They have a new center. I mean, this is and when you have a defensive line that the Bills have, like you just mentioned, I mean, that in itself is going to help the DBs probably more than anything. I mean, to be able to have a defensive line that is experienced and deep and can keep rotating guys early, I think as long as Jackson and Elam and Benford and the rest of that secondary is just communicating well and playing the defense the way it's supposed to be, they're going to. I don't think they're going to like shut down or put the Rams offense to bed or anything like that. I'm not insane yet, but I think they're going to perform very, very well, and there might be some growing pains. There might be some Elam flags for being too physical down the field, especially if they're going to emphasize illegal contact more with referees. But I think that this sort of concern over the matchup is understandable, but I think that there's a very, very reasonable path to feel comfortable where the Bills are with their defensive backs with regards to facing the Rams in their offense.
Jay Davis writes, people always leave out Taryn when naming CBs. Kupp is their main weapon in the slot, and our main starter is there. I leave out Taron Johnson when naming corners just because, like, while nickel is technically a corner, I kind of look at it as its own position. Like, it's really its own thing.
And especially in this defense, it really is its own thing. Because they asked Taron Johnson to do a lot in this defense to, not only be the nickel as sort of how we all generally view the nickelback position, but also they ask him to be super physical in run defense as well. And he is, and he steps up to that position in a great way that not every nickel corner can do. But that they ask a lot of him, and it's a very unique position. It's why they had a nickel coach,
yeah,
for a few years there. I mean, you got to be able to take that and understand the different nuances that go into playing nickel versus starting on the boundary. So,
right, but that's why. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that's why I do not typically list Taron Johnson when I'm talking about corners, just because in my internal dossier or whatever of the Bills roster, I don't even know if it sounded like a good word, right? If I didn't bring attention to it, you would have trusted that it makes sense in that context. But no, internally, when I'm listing the positions and the players at each position, I have nickel as its own thing with Taron Johnson and then whoever. Okay, moving on, David. Who is your second standout?
Second standout is one of these rookie linebackers, and that is one Terrell Bernard. Now, I was not enthused, to say the least, about drafting Terrell Bernard when they did. I was excited that Brandon Beane had traded back twice in the third round to pick up a couple extra picks. And then they ended up drafting Terrell Bernard after all that. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was, it was like, I don't really get this pick at all. And in this spot, and I hadn't really heard who Terrell Bernard was. So it was a combination of things that kind of soured me on the pick initially. But what we saw on Saturday, obviously the athleticism to take the ball and house it on a great play by him. But also he showed his instinct, his coverage ability in particular is what really stood out to me. And that's why they drafted him. They drafted him to be this extra coverage linebacker when they wanted to be. And it was really impressive to see to me. You saw a really instinctual player, instinctual, both. Let's say it's both.
Both, yeah, I like both.
That just knew what he was doing, and you could see why they were enamored with him to want to take him in the third round and say hey, this is somebody that we really, really like, somebody that's on our board, somebody that Dave Aranda, who is in the McDermott inner circle, has recommended and talked very highly about. Dave Aranda being the Baylor head coach, where Terrell Bernard played college football. Yeah, I mean, it's for the Bills, it was a combination of things where they were just we can't just ignore our process, essentially, even if we don't have a need at linebacker for a starter, and even if we were going to play base defense, he's not going to necessarily be like a Sam linebacker, because that's not his. That wouldn't be using him in the right way. But this is a guy that we want to have because we believe in his skill set, and he's somebody that fits what we want to do, and we don't want to go against our process. And that's how you end up with a good player like Bernard, even when you already have good players like Matt Milano there at that type of position.
Yeah, you talk about the instincts, you talk about the scoop and score, nose for the football. You know who else is praised for his nose for the football? Matt Milano. And typically, if you're instinctual or instinctive, whichever, like them both, that's good, right? That typically puts you around the football, and that puts you in positions to make plays. And Terrell Bernard, that's kind of what we've been talking about as a Milano-esque player. We see in week one, right? Or week one of the preseason, just around the football when Boogie Basham gets a strip sack and he turns it into a touchdown. So it has the athleticism to turn it into a touchdown, has the speed, even though he got caught. I don't know who caught him and just kind of escorted him into the end zone. That was funny. But again, good play there from Terrell Bernard. Kind of did get caught in coverage a couple of times, but not a bad game, I would say.
Yeah.
I think, again, a very promising debut from Terrell Bernard, as well as Balin Specter, who we will both talk about later. Both have points regarding Balin Specter, the 7th round pick, I think, who just made plays on special teams and defense. We'll get to that later. I think that is it time to talk about everyone's favorite player, David?
Let's do it.
Punt God, Matt Ariza on Saturday. Dude had an 82-yard punt. And I love it. I just love that this happened because the issue about Matt Araiza coming out of college was like, yes, he's booting balls 80 yards, but can he consistently do that in the NFL? Is he consistently going to hit the ball 80 yards? And can he increase his hang time while still booting it 80 yards? And can he do it in Buffalo? I don't know if he can do it. First kick in Buffalo, 82-yard punt with a 4.22 second hang time, which is his average last year at San Diego State was 3.92 seconds. So that is what, half a second almost increase in hang time, and he still boots the ball 82 yards. Now, the nerds will tell you that it was a touchback. I genuinely saw people tweeting like, oh, it was a bad kick. It was a bad kick. It was a touchdown. It doesn't matter. He was on his 10-yard line, and he kicked the ball into the opposing end zone.
Yeah.
It was the craziest thing I've ever seen a punter do in the NFL, barring Pat McAfee tackle a dude. Like, Matt Araiza kicking the ball 82 yards with ease is crazy. And I just can't believe people, again, it doesn't really matter because I don't know Victoria from the Tuck Rule, who was a friend of the podcast, has been on the podcast before. She made a good point on Twitter. She tweeted something like, yeah, this is cool, but like, I don't know how often the Bills are going to be backed up against their own end zone. I don't know how often Matt Araiza is going to be needing to punt from the 10-yard line and get a 62 net gain. Like, I don't know how often he's going to need to do that. I need to see him do it, from the 40 or from the 30, with more after punting areas, which is a perfectly fine idea, perfectly fine critique. I'm fine with that. But for the people who unironically watched this man line up on his 10-yard line, kick the ball 82 yards into the other end zone and say, it doesn't matter, it was a touchback. It was a 62 net gain. That is, any way you cut it, that is positive. That is great. And again, holding was another concern about Matt Araiza. He held a couple times on the day. He was perfect as a holder. Tyler Bass hit a couple of balls right through the middle of the uprights. Then he also held the 42-yard game winner. So, sorry, Matt Hawk, you're out. Matt Hawk is out of here. Matt Araiza has won this competition. We called it a couple of weeks ago. I kind of do feel bad a little bit for Matt Hawk. Because he's just kind of hanging around now. Like, it's over. Matt Araiza is winning this competition. It's been written for a while, but it's official now. And I do feel bad that Matt Hawk doesn't have these last couple of weeks. I'm sure he will sooner rather than later, but he doesn't have this opportunity to go and stick with another team. Like, if you remember a couple years ago with Stephen Hauschka and Tyler Bass, very, very early, they cut Stephen Hauschka and gave him the opportunity to go out there and stick on with another team. I expect they do that with Hawk relatively soon. But again, punt god, 82 yards in his first kick. Incredible.
Just wild. I mean, you really couldn't have written that any better, even if you tried. I mean, it's just so cool to be able to just like immediately right off the bat live up to that stupid nickname and reputation. I mean, it's just perfect. I mean, and just to point out, after the game was over and after Tyler Bass nailed that game-winning field goal, Tyler Bass took to Instagram, grabbed the highlight from the Bills account, and had a caption that said, "Great hold, Matt Araiza."
Hey, he knows. Tyler Bass is for the culture, for sure.
So, I'm not saying that's a sign, but also I'm 100% saying that's a sign. And like, if he thinks that's a good hold, and he thinks he's willing to put that out there for the social media world to take, Matt Hawk, you're probably done.
I don't. Is that 13? Is that how we're pronouncing that? Right.
Sure.
I'd like to see him place some punts, not just boom a punt, like place a punt from the 35. Exactly. All valid. I want to see that as well. But given the circumstances, like I said, given that he lined up on his 10-yard line and got a touchback, I'm fine with that. I don't care where the ball landed. I don't care what happened to the ball. The ball wasn't returned, whatever. A 62 net gain. I'll take that any day of the week, given the circumstances. Before we move in to our next topic, Mr. Free and Clear writes, whatever happened to the UDFA tight end? They took him off the field in favor of O.J. Howard in the fourth quarter, and then they cut him.
Yep.
Poor Jalen Weidermeyer. I was already cut. It's sad. I was kind of driving. I was pushing the Jalen Weidermeyer narrative a little bit earlier in the offseason. I was like, nah, he's better. He's better than the he's better than the combine performance would indicate. Look at his tape, and then you look at there were questions about his work ethic. Maybe that's why he didn't perform well at the combine. And I was like, well, if he's gonna fix it anywhere, it's gonna be in Buffalo. He got cut after a preseason game, so we'll see. What happens. We'll see what happens with Jalen Weidermeyer. All right, David, who is your final standout before we get into takeaways?
My final standout is the other rookie linebacker, and that is Balin Specter. Hardly know her, but
great joke.
Thank you. I know I'm very original. Thank you all very much. Balin Specter was really surprising to me because just sort of based on where he was drafted, where he went to school, what he looks like, whether that's fair or not. You kind of just felt like, I kind of have an idea of who this is. I kind of know who this is. Oh, that's a way better joke. Oh, that is a way better joke. John Curran, Specter ghosting the Colts. Oh, I love that.
We got the porn bots
again.
Hell yeah.
Someone get their girlfriends out of here. All right.
Hey. All right.
But with Balin Specter, I was like, this is gonna be like an Alex Singleton type, a special teams demon who probably thinks he's a little bit better than he actually is. But Specter,
name like Balin Specter, you think he's arrogant? What are you talking about?
Also, we're gonna have to, if he does make the roster, we're gonna have to deal with, whenever he plays or makes a special teams tackle, so many phones incorrectly auto-correcting his name to Babylon Specter, which happened to me a couple of times, and I had to go back and retype it before I actually sent it out. But I was like, oh boy, people are gonna have to deal with that, aren't they? But he just seemed like super physical. Like just really but not like dumb physical, not like Trevor Penning in training camp type of physical. Just like he wanted to stick his nose in there and play his assignment, and just he looked like he belonged. And I feel like that's how this whole rookie class looks like. They all look like they belonged on the football field, ready to go. They didn't look like rookies that were just kind of lost and bewildered and like, I'm not really sure. He looked really physical, instinctual. Somebody just sort of worth keeping around, and that's a 7th round pick. I mean, this is what you want to have, a 7th round pick. You want somebody who's going to be physical and make special teams plays, and when his number is called on, you don't want him to just sort of like shrivel up in the moment and not know what to do. He looked like he was ready and just like rearing to go pretty much from the get-go. What I will say, though, is we here on this podcast are not going to condone or endorse people using Balin Specter as a reason to dish on Tremaine Edmonds, i.e., I've never seen Tremaine Edmonds make the types of plays that Balin Specter does, which is just about the dumbest thing I saw today, which is saying something. So that is not something we're going to be doing here at the Cover One Roundup. We officially disavow those who try to push that dumbass shit.
I might do it. Why not? Why? I like it. I like stirring the pot. I like causing chaos. And as I said earlier,
You're just
I'm a
hoping Tremaine
pathological
Edmonds
liar.
reads the tweets.
I'm not ready to sit here and tell you that Balin Specter is a roster lock, but I am willing to say that I am happy that the Bills' 7th round pick is making it a discussion, which is more than I thought he would do. As I tweeted during the game, it sounds like a C tier villain name. Like I didn't expect anything out of Balin Specter, but again, played really well, was all over the place. 6 tackles, 3 run stops, also a play on teams. And again, that's all you want out of a 7th round pick. You're not expecting a 7th round linebacker named Balin Specter to come out and play meaningful snaps right away to beat Tremaine Edmonds, right? Which is, as Jason writes, what? Specter's not Edmonds' replacement? I know, right? But at least not this year, right? Give him a little bit of time, maybe. But no one's expecting Balin Specter to be that this year. A lot of people, I didn't expect Balin Specter to really be, in consideration for a roster spot. But this is all I want out of any late round draft pick, is for them to come in training camp, in preseason, play well, make plays, show value, and then, kind of make it a discussion. Like, oh, okay, it's going to suck if we have to part ways with this dude, but whatever. As we said in the Cover One chat earlier, like, it's the curse of good management and the curse of good scouting, where it's just like you run into the situation where you have more than 53 good players. You have 60 to 65 players who are NFL worthy, and the Bills are certainly in that position right now. A lot of guys currently on the Bills roster will likely end up on other NFL rosters. I don't know if Balin Specter is going to be one of those guys. He might be on the Bills. Who knows? But a promising start here for Balin Specter. And as we said, just the rookie class in general. I think that wraps up standouts, does it?
I think it does. Look at that.
Well,
look at us.
Let's go to takeaways now. Our takeaways, we each have 2 from this game. And I'll just start with linebacker depth, because we just talked about Balin Specter. As I said earlier regarding cornerbacks, it was kind of a concern, the linebacker depth. Like, do they have linebacker depth? Is there enough linebacker depth? After you got Tremaine Edmonds and you got Matt Milano, those are your 1-2, certainly. But then you got Terrell Bernard, rookie. Don't know what you're going to get out of him. Tyler Matakevich, special teamer. T-Dot. We know what Terrell Dodson is. He's a serviceable 3rd linebacker. Nothing great, nothing terrible, really. But again, I don't really trust T-Dot to play significant snaps. Who else do they have? Andre Smith, rangy, cool linebacker, but he's suspended for the first 6 games of the season. So there were some question marks, but we see in this first preseason game again, the linebacker depth is not as big of a concern as some people, me, made it out to be, really. Again, Terrell Bernard looking good, looking like a athletic linebacker, instinctual, looking like a guy who could be a 3rd linebacker potentially in base sets if need be, or just fill in should Milano go down. Terrell Bernard, that's what I just talked about. Balin Specter looked good. Andre Smith is my favorite Bills preseason player on this roster currently. You never see him play on defense in the regular season, but you watch him in the preseason, this guy wearing number 9, just running around sideline to sideline in the preseason. I love to watch Andre Smith again. And he's only like 24 or 25 years old. You don't really notice that Andre Smith is as young as he is. But again, he's just a guy that the Bills are quietly developing along. He'd have been for a couple of years, this guy who plays significant special team snaps, who can't really get on the field defensively. But I think, again, we'll see how the suspension really affects him here. But I think Andre Smith has a future on this team. And then Markel Lee made a couple of plays. Joe Giles Harris didn't look bad. Tyler Matakevich is a special teamer, so I'm not really going to talk about him. And then T-Dot didn't even play, I don't think. So you just look at the names here defensively. They're not all making the roster, but you have, I don't know how many linebackers they ultimately keep, but I am confident that the number that they ultimately land on, it will be X number of NFL caliber linebackers. It won't just be they're keeping a dude for numbers purposes. It'll be, okay, this is a very good linebacker who could play if needed.
Yeah. It's impressive that this position group has this many players worth like actually talking about and considering. It's pretty cool. So I don't really have anything else to add to that, honestly. So, it's good for the Bills. Good for the Bills.
Good. Again, as we said, the curse of good scouting, the curse of good management. You just end up with too many good players. Like Joe Giles Harris, I could honestly, I don't think he would never start for a team, but he could be a backup on an NFL team. Mark Kelly will probably be a special teamer and backup on an NFL team. Maybe not the Bills, but I think he'll be on a roster next year. T-Dot will be on a roster. I'm sure. I think it'll be the Bills ultimately, but he'll be on a roster. Balin Specter might end up on a roster. They just have guys, and Andre Smith, we'll see what happens. But they have depth here. They have depth at linebacker. And again, for a team that only plays with 2 linebackers, really, they have depth. So, David, what's your first takeaway?
Kind of said it earlier. Matt Haack is done. Probably done. I think when your starting kicker is the one highlighting your rookie punter for his holding ability, probably means you're on your way out, because that is pretty much the only reason why they brought in Matt Haack to begin with, because they were just totally over Corey Bojorquez screwing up Tyler Bass's kicks. And I can't blame them, because Corey Bojorquez went to Green Bay. And for anyone who watched that Bengals-Packers game near the beginning of the season last year, where they just could not finish that game off because Mason Crosby was screaming at Corey Bojorquez, hold my freaking kicks correctly. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like Matt Haack is done, and then you can't really blame him. This is somebody who struggled last year to punt, was really great as a holder, but when you draft a punter to begin with, that probably means you're out. And when your rookie punter is holding well enough for your kicker to actually highlight it, and is gifted in such a way to be likened as a deity, what more do you want to see? What more do you want to have happen here?
Yeah. As someone wrote
nice
earlier,
knowing you, Matt.
Right?
I guess
you can't feel bad for him. He made $100,000. Which yes,
right.
but also, and then FN writes, I want to find this, but I just bought my jersey. Right, and the Matt Haack jerseys, they were flying off the shelves. Right, they were out there grabbing their Matt Haack jerseys. I made a bet on fantasy app that the Bills would have a punter named Matt next year. So I think I'm going to ultimately win that bet, which is, good for me, right? That's big ups for the kid. But yes, I think really I've already said what I need to say about Matt Haack and Matt Ariza. It's punt god, right? I feel it would. Yeah. I'm not a religious guy. Who is like did God have any opponents? Did he have any ops?
Did he have any ops?
Who was God's number one opponent, Dave?
Probably this dude named Satan.
Well, yeah, but I'm not calling Matt Haack punt Satan. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to come on a podcast and call Matt Haack punt Satan.
Maybe Matt Haack is just like a punting Sadducee or a punting Pharisee. Punt Pharisee. There we go.
I don't know what that means, but I like it. It sounds really good. Out of context, if people are just coming in right now and they just see this comment, Satan.
Satan with punt just Pharisee.
General Satan. Punt fallen angel. I like it. Yeah, he's the punt fallen angel. That's a great wrestling gimmick. We come up with a lot of great wrestling gimmicks on this podcast. Okay. My second takeaway, the defensive line rotation. We talked about this earlier. This is something that they've been trying to master since McDermott, Bean, and Frazier got here in 2017, was this having 8 really good, sometimes 9 good defensive linemen who can come in and play, some of them play 60, the other play 40% of the snaps, or, in that range, 9 guys who can realistically fall somewhere in that range and contribute given those snaps. And it's sometimes worked better than others. Sometimes, you've seen guys benefit from it. Other times you've been like, okay, I would like this guy to be on the field more often than he's getting on the field. But this year, again, it looks like they have at least 8 or 9 NFL caliber guys who are going to contribute. We saw Tim Settle I mean, we talked about him earlier, just blowing up plays, shedding blocks, looking great and powerful at the line of scrimmage. The Quentin Nelson rep, that's all you have to say. Had a couple of nice reps, but the one was incredibly impressive, and it was just one of a number of impressive reps from Tim Settle on the day. He's going to be a very good third defensive tackle. Again, and he's not a guy who's going to play a ton. He's just a guy who's going to come in fresh and make impacts off the bench on a rotation. That's a great role for Tim Settle, and he's going to thrive in it. And then Boogie Basham is another guy who impressed in this game against the Colts. This is maybe some of the best football I've seen from Boogie Basham. Just looked good throughout. Wearing number 55 now, it's going to be incredibly weird to see someone not named Jerry Hughes wear number 55.
I think it's going to give him a little extra juice. I think he's going to inherit some of that Jerry juice.
I like it, and I like it. See, he was like Jerry Hughes in this game in that he generated pressure, unlike Jerry Hughes in that he delivered and that he finished. Boogie Basham finishes this game with a strip sack. Again, comes from behind. It was Matt Ryan, right, in the game at the time? Yeah. Strips it, and then Terrell Bernard picks it up and scores. Great play there from Boogie Basham. Had a number of nice reps on the day. Also had a run stop. DE4, defensive end 4, still kind of a mystery at this point between Epinesa and Shaq Lawson, in my opinion. But in neither one of them, Epinesa wasn't bad, but I really didn't notice him all that much. I didn't notice Shaq Lawson. But just looking at the defensive line as it is, you look at the starting 4. Miller, you know what Von Miller is. He's the 95th best player in the NFL, according to the NFL 100. Not quite as good as Mac Jones, though. What are you going to do? Maybe next year, Von Miller. Whatever. And then Greg Rousseau, we anticipate big things from Greg Rousseau. Was good last year as a rookie. Underrated as a rookie there for Greg Rousseau. And then Ed Oliver, we know what Ed Oliver is. And Daquan Jones, it's a very good, very stout front 4. And you look at the second 4, Tim Settle and Jordan Phillips. I don't know if they're going to be playing next to each other all that often. But again, as your hypothetical second unit, that's a very good interior of the line. And then you also have Boogie Basham, and then one of Shaq Lawson and AJ Epinesa. That's a good looking second 4. And then you're going to have guys like Eli Anko kind of rotate in sometimes when he's on the active roster up from the practice squad. You're going to have maybe Prince Emili. He played well. He did.
Brandon Bryant also played well. Who was 59 something? Jonathan, right?
Right, Kingsley, right? Yeah.
He was awesome too. I mean, it's insane just how suddenly stacked they are, and that's sort of what happens when you just keep hammering at a position. At a certain point, the dart throws are just going to hit.
Right. Yeah.
And right now, I think they have, and it's really, really cool to see. It's very impressive, and they're going to have some very tough decisions to make when it comes to cut down day. I
do want to pump the brakes a little bit. Your boy Lettuce.
Oh yeah.
199 super chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Punk God sending a ball home. That's what he did. Nearly out of the stadium. Damn near, hit it into orbit. And I think he could do that. I think maybe not in this stadium, next stadium when the wind is better. Oh, that's another thing. People were saying that the wind helped Punt God. The wind is what pushed it 80.
Was it a windy day in Buffalo?
I don't think so. Not that I remember. Not particularly windy. And there are some windy days in Buffalo. And I've
heard that. I've heard that before.
I know, right?
Twice.
And it wasn't particularly windy, and also it's as though Matt Hawk didn't hit 80-yard punts in college,
right?
Or Matt Hawk. I meant Matt Ariza. You guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
No wind. There was no wind apparently. What else was I gonna say? Oh, I want to pump the brakes a little bit. Pump my own brakes and pump the brakes just on the D-line hype a little bit, and say that it is preseason, right? Because yes. I remember this podcast was just starting last year around this time. We were talking about the defensive line, and I was hyping up Greg Rousseau, hyping up Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, right? These guys looked great in the preseason, and Boogie Basham really didn't. But, Epinesa and Rousseau looked great in the preseason, and I was like, oh, they're going to have this great rotation. And then it was kind of more of the same. So realistically, that could happen. But it does feel a little different this year when you see Tim Settle, right? Tim Settle's story. You see what he did with the Commanders in a limited role, but you take what he did there, and then you see what he did against Quentin Nelson, the best guard in the NFL probably, or at least an all-pro guard, one of the best guards in the NFL. I think it's promising. Boogie Basham looking great. I am intrigued. It's a better unit, and I think that we're going to see we're going to reap the benefits from that this year. So, David, your second takeaway, what is it?
My second takeaway, as soon as I come back to this document, is that it's more of a question, which is how many defensive backs are going to be kept on this roster. So obviously, there's the starting five of Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Taron Johnson, and Dane Jackson. So 5 plus Kaiir Elam plus probably Christian Benford at this point.
I gotta write down names.
Plus DeMar Hamlin, probably, because they really like him. Plus
Jaquan.
Jaquan Johnson. Jaquan Johnson. He had a great
game. He had a great pick. My gosh, almost housed that.
He had a great pick, and he was stuffing his nose in at the goal line. That was awesome. Cam Lewis, backup nickel. I mean, we're up to 10 now.
I don't know. You might cut it off at Cam Lewis.
We might.
He's not playing. He's not going to get playing time. Great depth piece, but again, you just have too many good players. You can't keep them all.
This is where we're at. So
9 DBs seems like a lot.
It's a lot of defensive backs. But when you play with 5 on the field the majority of the time,
right, you can sacrifice a linebacker.
Yeah. It's going to be tricky. This is the issues with having again, going back, just the issues with having a talented roster and good drafting, and that's just part of it. I really don't know exactly what the plan will be when it comes to that, but it's going to be interesting. And I think ultimately they got to keep at least 9, right?
Yeah, 9 is where I'm at right now in terms of I need at least, at this juncture, August 15th at 8:06 p.m., I need these 9 on the 53 come, final cut down day. I would like Cam Lewis. I don't know if I need Cam Lewis. I would like Nick McLeod, but he's more of a practice squad guy probably, but I don't think he gets there. Evidence that he probably doesn't. I would love Lafayette Pitts. It just doesn't seem like something that could happen at this point, sadly. Mike writes, keep 11 DBs. That seems excessive to me. That's again, but I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't necessarily be upset with 11 DBs, but I feel like you don't need 11 DBs. I feel like you can get 1 or 2 of these guys on the practice squad theoretically. Yeah. But I don't know. Like Greg Vorse, who's been doing a bunch of great written content. He's been on this podcast in the past. He's written about Cam Lewis a couple of times, identifying him as a potential trade chip, as a guy who could increase his trade value with a strong preseason. And he wrote that he knows Cam Lewis a little bit from his UB days, and the thing that he really values is playing time, which really isn't going to come in Buffalo, would more likely come on a different roster. So it's just, and again, I love the depth. I just don't really know if I can get all the depth on the roster. I don't know if they can keep all the depth. As DF writes here, we're going to lose many players on the practice squad this year. They have like 60 or 65 players who should be on the 53. And you run into you run into the issue where you can't keep them all. Who did Kevin have here? Who's the extra that Kevin has? Was I not factoring someone in? Jaquan Johnson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Saron Neal.
Did I had Neal? So I wasn't.
You had Neal. I didn't say Neal. But yes, Saron Neal should be. Yes.
So 10. Oh boy. We gotta move on. We gotta stop because once math gets involved, that's when I start rambling and I start losing it. So, I think that wraps up takeaways, does it not?
Yes,
all right. So I do want to hit back up honorable mentions, which I've talked about earlier. These are just like honorable mentions, right? It's exactly what this segment name would suggest. Just things that we didn't really talk about in standouts or we didn't talk about in takeaways, but we do want to give them a little bit of love, a little bit of shine. Isaiah McKenzie. And by that, I mean Isaiah Hodgins. It's not often that a team has two players named Isaiah, but this one does.
Yeah.
Isaiah Hodgins, as I said at the top of the show, everyone has been trying to tell me for years that he is this diamond in the rough. I have not seen it because he hasn't had the opportunity to show me. Really hasn't had the opportunity to play all that much. Misses his entire rookie year, and then he plays 4 snaps last year, right? So he hasn't had the opportunity to really – Jessica writes, if a team offered a first-round pick for Bedford, would you take it? Yes, and twice.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I think I would do that. I'd consider it. I might ask them to throw in a third, but
that's right.
Yes, I would. I think I would do that. And then, what was I talking about? Oh, Isaiah Hodgins, not really getting the, maybe not getting the love he deserves from me. And he shows on Saturday that he is a good player. Again, upwards of 90 yards. He had like 5 receptions for upwards of 90 yards. Similar, stat line ultimately to Khalil Shakir, but I think the way that he did it was more impressive. Had a couple of great breaks off the line. I think he had a drop as well, but also that catch along the sideline for Matt Barkley. That kind of was the spark to the Bills offense, that sparked that Bills comeback. Great to see from him. Raheem Blackshear is a guy who doesn't have really any hope to make the 53-man roster. I can't find a way to get him on this 53, but he looked great, right? The cuts, just intense cuts, great receiving options, great, not compliment because he is the same player as James Cook, not the same player, but a similar player to James Cook, same strength, same playing style. But, a great, a poor man's James Cook, if you will, is what Raheem Blackshear is. And I would love to keep him around on the practice squad.
Yeah, both of them played really well, and like you said, like we've kind of been waiting for the Isaiah Hodgins hype train to show up in reality, and it kind of did on Saturday. So good for him, and it's going to make the wide receiver room, particularly like between him and Jake Kumaro. That's going to be a tough decision to make, I think. And they really love Jake Kumaro as a special teamer. I think they want more out of him as a receiver. Who knows if they're actually going to be able to do that. But, fumbling the ball definitely doesn't help your case in that regard. But, Isaiah Hodgins, I mean, this is year 3 for him. One would hope he had made progress, and it looks like he has. So it's going to be that particular battle between him and Kumaro is going to be one to really monitor throughout the rest of the preseason, because it's probably going to come down to one or the other, I would think. Because if Kumaro gets cut, we know he's going straight to Green Bay to be with ayahuasca expert Aaron Rodgers. Can we talk just 10 seconds? Just 10 seconds. What the shit is who?
He's dating a witch.
Who just, like, as his agent, when you just see that, because he didn't tell his agent beforehand that he was going to say that. When you see Aaron Rodgers drinks ayahuasca tea, you're just thinking, like, can this guy just, like, stop for 5 minutes and not make
be normal? Please, Aaron Rodgers, be normal challenge. Impossible difficult.
I love the NFL just be like, well, it's not really a problem.
He's immunized though, so it's fine. It's
right.
okay. All is fine. You'll love to see it, man. Aaron Rodgers. Pops Mafia writes, Blackshear is the new Christian Wade. Yes, but the difference is that Blackshear plays football. Blackshear has played football, knows how to play football. I say this as someone who loves Christian Wade, right? I say this as someone who was pushing for Christian Wade. I was part of the Christian Wade hive a couple of years ago. I was like, if he's doing this well, if he's making plays when he doesn't know how to play football, imagine when he knows how to play football. It's going to be incredible. And he never got the opportunity to shine, sadly. Would have loved to stick him around. Talk about a guy who embraced the community. I saw him at a bar one time, and my friend worked his way. My friend from Germany worked his way into his private booth. It was actually impressive. It was great outing there for my friend who worked his way into Christian Wade's private area. And then when my friend was like, I'm from Germany, Christian Wade was like, Guten Tag. And I was like, that's a great interaction there. That's a story. And I just told it on the Cover One Roundup. Okay. What else? People are talking a little bit about just special teamers in general. This has been something that I've seen numerous comments of throughout the night. Just the idea of like, we're at the point with this Bills roster now where they really can't afford to keep guys whose only contributions come on special teams, because you are losing players who can potentially contribute offensively or defensively in favor of these, 30-year-old special teamers, which is an argument that at this point I would listen to. In years past, when it wasn't that strong of a roster and you were keeping a Taiwan Jones or maybe Jay Kumro, where it's just like, okay, I know you're never going to be a contributor for me, but you contribute on special teams and you're good at it. So, that's you're a good piece to have. But like at this point where it's like, you see Kumro and it's like, yeah, you're great on special teams, but I could keep a Nick McLeod over you who I could develop long-term, just like that's when you're at the bottom of the roster, you're not comparing Kumro to the rest of the receivers. You're comparing him to dudes who are at the bottom of the roster at other positions. So like, I like Kumro. He's never going to contribute that much offensively. So at this point, I think I might rather keep, someone else who I can develop long-term to potentially play offensively or defensively. A Blackshear, again, I think you can get him on the practice squad, but Blackshear compares himself to Debo. In what? That they play football?
Good for him.
What? I compare myself. I am Debo. I am Debo in podcasting.
I am Debo.
I love it.
My name is Debo Samuel, son of whoever his parents are Samuel, and my honor remains.
Yes, we also compare ourselves to Debo. Okay, Hodgins over Kumro. Exactly. Like that's an example, right? Where okay, does Kumro bring more to my team? This again, I don't know if you necessarily lose Hodgins if you get rid of him, or if you try to get him on the practice squad. I don't know if you lose him. I don't know if another team claims him. But long term, who offers more to this team offensively, Isaiah Hodgins or Jay Kumro? It's not a conversation. And Pete writes, Kumro is a lock, likely. But it's again, these are conversations. Kumro is far more safe in his roster status than a Taiwan Jones, right? I mean, they've already let Taiwan Jones go once, but like with Taiwan Jones, he's a guy who hasn't contributed offensively since the 2017 season on a wild play against the Bucs. And then the last time he contributed offensively in the NFL maybe was against the Bills in Houston when he set Houston up to beat them in the playoff game. So like Taiwan Jones at this point is like a good locker room guy, good, he's been around for most of the McDermott Bean era, but I'm not going to be heartbroken if they lose out on Taiwan Jones because they want to keep someone else with more upside long term. I think that
I think we're good on this conversation.
I'm done with my special teams rant. Quentin Morris has looked great at camp, but can he make this roster? That's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about tight ends later in the True or Rubbish section, which is everyone's favorite segment. Everyone's been loving the True or Rubbish segment. You should see my DMs, David. I said that last week. Even crazier this week. The people love it. But before we do that, let's go into IRCs, right? Or areas of improvement. These are things that didn't I'm not pressing the panic button on any of these things because it's week 1 of the preseason, but these are things that kind of irked me throughout the games in areas in which the Bills could improve moving forward. So for me, my biggest irk was turnovers. So I would like to preface this and say this is by no means a cause of concern for the regular season because these turnovers were committed by players that hopefully aren't going to play that much come the regular season. And, Case Keenum is not playing unless bad things happen. But Case Keenum had 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, one of which was kind of his fault. The other one off the hands of Jamison Crowder into the hands of whoever intercepted the ball. Also had a fumble, and then Jay Kumro had a fumble, and then Matt Barkley had a pick. So again, these aren't concerns, right? I'm not concerned about Case Keenum's turnovers per se, and I'm not concerned about the third string quarterback throwing a pick either. But it was just irksome to me because you really, especially in the first half, couldn't see the offense get going. You could not see this offense get into a rhythm. You couldn't really see what Ken Dorsey wanted to do. And you did see a little bit of, creativity in terms of sets and things like that from Ken Dorsey. You did get a few glimpses, but you weren't able to really see anything consistent. And you couldn't really see the team going downfield all that often because they would get the ball and turn it over almost immediately. So it was just annoying, more so than anything. Again, an irk. I'm not saying it's an area of improvement or ball security. I guess it always is an area of improvement. You always want to be secure with the football, but I'm not concerned about it moving forward. But this kind of leads into my bigger irk and something that I didn't consider until we were in the third quarter of this football game. The Bills do not have a fun preseason quarterback, which makes for a bad viewing experience for old Kyle and for us as podcasters who, need to talk about these games, right? Who we need to be watching into the third and fourth quarter. I mean, David, you do a recap, right? You need to be watching every play and analyzing every play and having a deep understanding of every single play. And you want them to be entertaining, but the Bills, again, functionally, it's a sound strategy, right? If you have no intentions of keeping a fourth quarterback, regardless of how athletic or fun to watch he is, there's no reason in getting him preseason reps, right? Especially if you're just going to cut him and have no intention of keeping him on the practice squad because you have Barkley on the practice squad and Keenum backing it up. So it makes sense why they're getting these guys reps and, why they're not rostering a fourth quarterback who they have no intentions of keeping. It all makes sense. But selfishly, as someone who has to watch all the games, I want an athletic fourth string quarterback out there making plays. I want someone who I can, Barkley and Keenum are bad in not fun ways. I want a quarterback.
Are you saying you want Nate Peterman?
Yes, or if you're going to
Nate
be
Peterman
bad,
stiff-armed a dude on in the game before the Bills when he was playing with the Bears. I'm just saying.
If you are going to
Nate
be
Peterman,
bad,
come back, baby.
There are like a couple of categories of bad. There is just like general bad. They're like sad bad, which is what Keenum and Barkley fall into, where it's like you're not good and I don't like watching you. There is funny bad, which is Nate Peterman, where it's like you're not good, but I'd laugh at you. And then there is I don't want to say Malik Willis because he had a couple of great throws, but he also had a couple of plays where he just like or like a Kellen Mond.
That's how you expected him to look.
Exactly. Yeah. Or just like these players where they're not good. They're missing throws. They're missing open receivers. They're not necessarily having good games once you like actually watch the film. They're not, it's not a good game from a quarterback, but they are a hell of a lot of fun to watch during the game. They are running around making plays, and that's all you want in the preseason, and we're not getting that, which, again, all selfish. Why they're not doing it makes perfect sense from an organizational standpoint. All I know is that when I buy Madden, I think it's out now, actually. When I buy Madden, I am signing the fastest quarterback. That's how I'm fixing it for myself, and he's my preseason quarterback. David, what's your irk?
It was going to be two parts. I was going to talk about Crowder and Kumaro being disappointing, but
Tyree Jackson.
Yeah, we kind of already went too much into Kumaro, and Crowder, I think, is going to be on the roster, so I'm not going to waste a bunch of time with that. But offensive line depth, as it is for pretty much the rest of the NFL and has been for a while, just sucks. There is no offensive line depth. It was very, very obvious throughout this whole game, especially when you got into the second half and they were putting in the third string guys. It was just like, this is brutal. This is really rough, and nobody can sustain these blocks, and it's pretty much impossible to watch. Even if you account for Case Keenum and Matt Barkley not being the most entertaining quarterbacks, they certainly were not helped by the fact that this offensive line just has no depth, and that's the problem of the NFL. There is far greater defensive line depth, much like the Bills have, than there is offensive line depth, which the Bills absolutely do not have. So it's it also made for a pretty brutal viewing experience. So, oh well, what are you getting?
Right. And again, these aren't things that we're necessarily upset over. It just ruins the viewing experience when You just get to the fourth quarter and the athletes on the defensive line are infinitely better than the athletes on the offensive line. What else? Does that wrap up Irks? Is it time for everyone's favorite segment, David?
Cue up the sound effects, Kyle.
It is time for the much beloved, critically acclaimed segment, True or Rubbish.
The true or rubbish. Let's go.
Love it. Let's go. This is
Let's
True or
see
Rubbish.
true or rubbish.
No, I didn't. I thought I clicked loop off in time, but I did not. This is the segment where I give David a number of situations or prompts, and he tells me whether or not they are true or rubbish, just as the name would suggest. We're going to start out with a doozy. Okay, David, as they all are each and every week. I never give you softballs here, right? I have journalistic integrity. I say this every week.
Well, we are big journos with the big J.
Right. Certainly not a fan
Hard
site. That's
J.
not what we
That's
do
right.
here. We're no
Definitely
fan
not.
site BS, right? This is hard-hitting journalism. Okay. True or rubbish? It is now a three-way race for cornerback 2.
I'm going to say rubbish.
It was rubbish all after all.
Wow.
It was all rubbish.
It was all rubbish.
We love the Christian Bedford. We do, as we just spent quite a bit of time talking about how much we like him on this podcast. However, one of our fellow Cover One writers, Hansel, tweeted out before the game a picture of Bart Simpson writing on the chalkboard, "I will not overreact to NFL preseason." And I quote tweeted that and said, okay. And then 10 hours later, what if Christian Benford is a Pro Bowler or something like that? Not knowing that was actually going to be sort of in the atmosphere of what we were going to be talking about. But no, I mean, Christian Benford has been playing well. He's been doing a really good job in training camp. He performed well in that preseason game. But they sat Dane Jackson for a reason, and that's because they believe he's going to be the second quarterback right now. They started Kaiir Elam because he's a rookie and he needs experience. So that's where I think they're at. I don't see this as a three-way race for quarterback 2. I think they see this as Dane Jackson and Kaiir Elam are going to be competing for who's going to start when Tre'Davious White comes back. Also, it's nice to have Christian Benford play well in addition to all that.
I agree. I don't necessarily think Benford factors into this CB3 or CB2 race, rather, but he's a great piece to have. It is great to have the FCS player from Villanova showing out in the first week of the preseason and in training camp. Next topic. True or rubbish? Boogie Basham is firmly defensive end 3.
True.
This was true.
Firmly.
All after all. Can't believe it.
True.
It was true.
It was true.
He really looked good in that preseason game. It seems like he's been making progress. This is somebody that they like. Obviously, Vaughn and Rousseau are going to be the starting defensive ends. And, I mean, it's nice to have somebody experienced like Shaq Lawson. It's nice to have is it nice to have H. Epinesa? I have no idea. But he's right now, he's not the one competing for Edge 3. I think Boogie Basham is who they want to have starting there, and so far it seems like that's going to be the plan. So I am in on Boogie Basham as Edge 3.
I love. There is nothing I wanted more when I started this segment than to have people in the chat actually writing true and rubbish. I love it. It's all
the
went
power
perfectly to play. It is
the power we hold.
John Osborne, thank you. Coming in clutch with the roster update. Giants roster update. New
Ooh,
York claims cornerback Elijah Griffin. Makes a ton of sense.
Well,
I mean,
he just wasn't appreciated in Buffalo.
Is that what he said?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay.
I'm just pretending to be John Feliciano.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, I get that. That's a good joke.
Thank you.
I love
Clearly,
it.
it wasn't. It took me explaining it to get you, but whatever.
Well,
We've just been co-hosts for this podcast for
Right,
almost a year now, but whatever.
David, you know that I'm stupid, right? You know that it takes me a little bit to figure things out. So just give me a second. I maybe would have I would have been watching this back later and been like, oh, okay, I get it. That makes sense. Next, true or rubbish? OJ Howard is on the roster bubble.
That is absolute rubbish.
That is rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
That's yeah, I agree.
I don't know how many people I saw talking about it. I don't want to try and make too much out of what is probably just a straw man. But there seemed to be some people who were like, why is OJ Howard playing in the fourth quarter? It's like, well, they needed someone who could block. Like they needed someone who could do
the
something.
Offense,
Yeah, just like, and you know what? If he gets a little extra experience, a little extra, run, good for him. He's not on the roster bubble. He was not playing in the fourth quarter because they don't like him. He wasn't playing in the fourth quarter because it's been disappointing, despite what the big J journos say. He's just
no splash plays from OJ Howard.
Whatever.
He's the Tremaine Edmonds of offense. Oh no,
we're not doing this. But yeah, no. OJ Howard is not on the roster bubble. He is tight end 2, and we are perfectly okay with that.
No, I mean it's interesting that he was playing in the fourth quarter, but again, they needed some blocking, and then there was some conspiracy theories in the Cover One chat, which I quite liked. Maybe they had already decided that they were cutting Jalen Weidermeyer, and they were like, I don't want to worry about the injury settlement, so let's just take him off the field, put in a guy who can play, who can block, and then we'll cut Weidermeyer tomorrow, which is exactly what they did. So maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe they had already made up their minds that Weidermeyer was gone and they didn't want to risk anything. So, or maybe, like we said, they just needed a blocker. So, last one here. This one's great. I can get you going here. Are we hitting the panic button? True or rubbish? We're hitting the panic button on Case Keenum.
No, that's rubbish.
That is rubbish all after all.
Rubbish.
It was all rubbish.
I don't care if he literally pisses his pants in the preseason. I've seen enough Case Keenum in the regular season to know that he is a perfectly fine and capable backup quarterback. And that's all I need to know. That's it. We don't need to pretend that this one game against the Colts where Jameson Crowder tips up a pass that was in his hands for an interception, and Jake Kumaro is fumbling the ball. That's not on Case Keenum. That's not really on Case Keenum. Just make some plays. What else do you want? I'm not. We're not gonna hit the panic button on Case Keenum. It's rubbish. All rubbish.
All right. Let's see if this is true or rubbish. It's a great segment. Everyone loves it. Cutting corners, right? Barkley's better than Keenum. I said what I said. I've been saying it too, cutting corners. I love Matt Barkley. Dude is he's a shrewd investor, if you will. Knows where to put his money. We love him here. T Dobbs writes, is Darrell Williams still currently an unsigned free agent? He is. I just looked it up. I would say there is a non-zero chance. I know, right? Bold takes from Kyle here. That's what you tune in for. I would say there is a better than zero chance, better than one chance even, that Darrell Williams is ultimately re-signs with the Bills, just because he does have that positional versatility. Played both guard and tackle here. Better at tackle than he did at guard probably. But I think that given what we saw from the offensive line, wasn't bad, but wasn't great. And it wasn't, Luke Tenuda's no Darrell Williams. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the offensive line. I would not be opposed to taking out or to bringing Darrell Williams back. That wraps up true or rubbish. I know. Does that wrap up the show?
It does for me. I'm leaving. Maybe you could do the rest of it. You could do another half hour.
All right. Yeah. I'll bring back the Star Wars segment. I'll bring back the Star Wars segment. We got Star Wars coming back next month. We have football, but it's the Star Wars segment that I'm more excited about for this show. David, how's your fantasy football drafts going? Are you deep into fantasy football yet?
So I've got one this Saturday, with a bunch of people, some of which I know, some are friends from high school or Actually, I don't even really want to call them friends. It's like one friend and a couple other jackasses I knew from high school.
I hope they don't watch the podcast.
I hope they do, and I hope they tell me not to come back to this league because it aggravates and annoys me every year to waste $100 on this stupid buy-in to play with these
ridiculous.
jabronis.
Yeah, absolutely
I'm
not.
done. I'm out of this.
Yeah, unless you're just running over that league. That's it. Well, do something. What are the rules? Exploit the rules.
I wish I could. I should take over as commissioner just to like tilt things in my favor like 1 year and then just leave and take their money, but I won't.
DF going crazy in chat. Bills want OBJ, true or rubbish? Come on, Cover One, answer this one. Buffalo Bills want OBJ, true or rubbish? David, the people are demanding you answer this.
So this is specifically worded. This is specifically worded. Buffalo wants OBJ, true or rubbish? Not will OBJ be with the Bills? Not does OBJ want to be on the Bills? Does Buffalo want OBJ? I think that's
Buffalo
true.
wants OBJ, true or rubbish?
I think true.
This was true all after all.
True all after all.
It was true.
Wow. No, I agree. I would tend to agree with that. I think, Von Miller going on the Pat McAfee show and saying the door is open. I think that's pretty clear that, they're open to OBJ coming. But as we said last week with OBJ, it's just a matter of he has no incentive to sign anywhere right now. Yeah. Why would he choose Buffalo now?
Just chill, just relax, rehab that knee. When a team wants you, they'll come calling.
Exactly. Again, Buffalo probably wants him, but we'll see in December when he's ready to go what happens. If Buffalo still wants him, if Buffalo's still interested, or if he wants to come to Buffalo, we'll see what happens. True or rubbish, Blackshear makes the roster. I'll answer that one, David. I'll take that one.
That is rubbish.
That is rubbish. All after all. It was all rubbish. I like Raheem Blackshear. I think he's, a fun piece, fun developmental piece that you put on the practice squad for a year or two, and then maybe eventually he can compete for a spot. But I do not see him, making a roster spot this year. Okay. We'd like to thank you guys for watching. I do remember what we were doing for a second. Make sure to subscribe to the Cover One YouTube channel. That's what you're watching this on right now, presumably. Maybe Facebook. If you're on Facebook, make sure to like the page. If you're watching on Twitter, make sure to follow the Cover One Twitter account. Make sure to check us out on TikTok. We're over there. The YouTube Shorts. We've been killing the YouTube Shorts game. We've been killing every game, right? We're the best Bills fan site in the world, I would say, maybe, or up there at least, maybe a top 5 Bills fan site. And make sure to subscribe to the Cover One Roundup on iTunes. Leave a 5-star review if that's your honest review. If it's more 4 or 3 stars, I want honesty more than anything. I'm a man of integrity more than a man of inflated ego, if you will. So just,
Okay, I'm not. Give us 5 stars because that really helps the show. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
It does. And leave a review, a written review.
I'm very shameless about this. I don't care.
Leave a review on the Cover One Roundup Buffalo Bills podcast that says their Star Wars talk is great. And I love when they reference the British child. I love when they steal the British child's TikTok sounds and use them in a segment. That's wonderful. Make sure to subscribe to all the Cover One Roundup or all the Cover One iTunes feeds. Also, great shows coming up here this week. Like I said at the top of the show, you got Going Deep tomorrow with complimented by the Isaiah Hodgins Film Room. And then you also got Disguised Coverage and Cover One Buffalo on Wednesday. And then also make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. Again, use promo code Cover One. That's cover with the number 1, and they will match your initial deposit up to $100. So, David, where can the people find you on Twitter?
The people can find me right there at DFAUXY at DFoxy. You can find some surprisingly interesting takes during Bills games, and then not a whole lot in between those. So have fun with that. Kyle, where can the people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Silagyi. Thank you all for watching, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.